Hello all, can you see me? Can you hear me okay? How's it sound? How's the who all is here? Let me see. Let me get the chat on. All right. All right. So who all is here? Yay! I see Chazco's there. So how's the sound coming across? Can you guys hear me okay? Howdy, Chazco. Present. Well, I'm glad you're present, Sparky. Better than being absent, huh? Great. That's good to know, Chazco. I'm glad the sound is good. Well, I'm coming to you live from my truck. I am parked in a truck stop. Hey, Roy. Hey, Roy, did you notice I made you a moderator? You got a little wrench by your name there. I was able to do that with my last failed attempt. I was going to try to do it last month, wasn't able to, but I made a few people moderators. You're one of them, Roy. So welcome aboard. So everybody behaving here. When you see the people, the moderator, you know, if you guys say something inappropriate, this is like a family show. You know, you could get timed out, so we don't want to have that happen. We want everybody to behave here. So it's glad to have you fellow model railroaders on board. Only one thing I will say, Roy, and for all the other moderators, if a person is asking questions about trains, or is maybe new to the hobby, or they don't have any, you know, their own channel doesn't have any videos, don't exclude them for that. Let them be on, because I want to bring in all people to the hobby that are interested, that may be planting the seed to get them started in the hobby. So don't be too exclusionary to people that may come on board and want to see what we're doing here. But if there's any bad language or harassing or something strange like that, then yep, moderators, come on board and do your job. And hi, John Dilly, welcome aboard. Well, I'm glad to be back. There's been a lot of things in the past couple of months since I haven't. Hi, Mike Pfeiffer, welcome aboard. I'm glad you've come online with us tonight. So, okay, if you lose signal, Roy, we'll just come back on when you can. So, anyway, like I said, there's been a lot of changes going on in my life, and I've had a lot of things happening, and that's why I haven't been on here live streaming. Some of my closest friends know that are on here, and most people don't know. I've separated from my wife, and in fact, that's why last month's live stream was canceled. That was the day of my separation, actually. The day we separated, that we had our final breakup. And it changed everything. So I am pretty soon going to be moving to Las Vegas. I already have a place set up there, Las Vegas, Nevada. I used to live there a few years ago. In fact, I used to work for the casinos there. So yeah, a lot of changes, but a lot of good things I hope will come of it. You know, I am trying to, you know, focus on building my model railroad. I haven't even started with that. I've accumulated quite a lot of rolling stock and building kits and little vehicles to put on when I do have the thing. So hopefully I'll be getting going with that. But I wanted to discuss something tonight about something that we as model railroaders do, or, you know, look at. No, I don't have a gambling problem, thank you, about going to Las Vegas. One thing they don't have much of is good hobby shops. I used to go down to a generalized hobby shop, had some train stuff, had RC stuff and other things, but they really lacked a good hobby shop there. Maybe that's changed since I haven't lived there in a few years, but I worked for the casinos, for Harrah's Entertainment. They've since rebranded themselves as Caesars Entertainment. So I was around gambling all the time, and I wasn't a dealer or anything. I didn't do that when I worked in the past. Oh, it's Nancy here. Hey, welcome, Nancy. I didn't see she was here. But anyway, when I was in Vegas, I worked in advertising. In fact, if you went to Las Vegas between 2004 and 2008, if you happened to visit that city, there's a good chance you saw a billboard of mine, or if you went into the airport, you saw a big sign of mine as you came into the terminal there. I had a lot of my work was visible there. And little old me, now I'm into trucking. Big change in life. But the Great Recession changed a lot of things, so that's why I'm here now. Yeah, tell me about what hobby stores. They do need more. They do have people in the hobby, though, out there. They just need more stores. Anyway, tonight I want to discuss something that I'm sure a lot of us model railroaders have thought about from time to time. When we're going to be making our layouts, when we're going to be deciding what we want to model, okay? When we set up, I guess our desires, each of us have a desire and how we want to convey that on a model railroad. Oh, hey, Eric, welcome aboard. I didn't see you were here. So, again, this tonight is going to be dedicated to what epoch or what period are we modeling? What era, I guess you could say, of, do we choose to model? Some people are into freelance model railroading. Some are into, getting it exactly as it was in history or as close to it, and so they want to, and then, so that's a prototype modeler. And then some are into sort of halfway between, proto-lance, we call them. And I guess if you're freelancing, you could model any error or have mixture of errors. You could do that. But when you're trying to do like what I'm pretty much trying to do, prototypical, maybe a little bit of proto-lance, or but mainly prototypical. What I want to accomplish with my model railroad. And so I wanted to ask you guys, what do you do when you are planning your model railroad? What do you do to try to keep it consistent with your aims? And mine, I'm doing the 1960s. The day the railroad died, long live the Southern Pacific, 1966 to 1976. Okay. Right, I was just reading that from you there. But one of the things, I brought some samples along of some cars that I got. Thank you, Mike, by the way, for your services there, because these cars came from Mike Piper Hobby. Okay, I'm going to try to hold this as close to the camera as I can. See if it will focus in on it. Maybe not. I don't know. Let me see if I can get it to focus. Probably can't. Well, I know you can see it's a Union Pacific. Hi, Tony. Welcome aboard. Hey, Jerry. Well, this Union Pacific, if you see, it has the three lines of text up here. Even though it's blurry, let me back it up a bit. Maybe it won't focus in. It's my cell phone, so I apologize. I can't focus in much better on this. But this is a 40-foot double door boxcar, plug and sliding door, made by Microtrains. But the thing that is particular to it is it was made, or the paint scheme is from the 1960s. And that's the era I'm modeling. So everything that I try to get for my model railroad, I try to have it, be of the 1960s. I actually will go a little bit into the 70s. I do have some rail boxcars and some things like that. But I'm really trying to mainly stick with the 60s. That's the era I'm modeling. So the equipment I have would be from the 50s and 60s. Locomotives. Here's another one. This is a 1960s paint scheme. You can see a Santa Fe. And that's what I try to do. So when I'm making out my shopping list for items I want to do, I see that the rock, Rock Island with the rock scheme, I tend to stay away from that. I see maybe some newer, more modern the Norfolk Southern, which we have now, and all those. I don't buy any modern style equipment, including modern auto racks, that you see nowadays. Hey, Nathan DeLay, welcome aboard. Good to see you there. So I try to get all of those things that are typical for the era I'm modeling. And it's very important to me, including down to the little vehicles. I have a whole bunch of little vehicles that Classic Metalworks makes. And they don't make many in the 60s, but every now and then they do. And I try to get 60s vehicles. I have some from the late 50s, because they did last up into the 60s. But I'm mainly modeling around the mid-60s era. And I try to keep everything, including buildings, I buy. Did any of you see a couple years ago, Walthers came out with 2 different versions of the Dairy Queen building? I think it was a Walthers Cornerstone kit. I know they had an N scale. They may have had it also an HO scale, for any of you HO scalers out there. Did you happen to see the 2 different versions they came out with? I'm curious. Anybody got want to chirp in there? The Dairy Queen building made by oh, I see what, yeah, Mike, not anything longer than 60 feet. I tend to leave 60 feet, except I do have passenger cars that are longer, so I do have those. But yeah, 50, 60 feet. I do have, well, I should say I do have an 82 or 85 foot Bluford shops, the big auto parts Santa Fe. That was a 60s car, but it's a long car, about the length of a passenger car. Big old box car. So I have one of those. But so anyhow, did any of you see those 2 buildings that Walthers came out with about 2 or 3 years ago? The 2 Dairy Queens. Do you know what I'm talking about? I'm waiting for the first person to say, yeah, they saw it. So who saw those? Got to be somebody here that saw that. Okay, you got both of those kits. All right, Mike, thanks. You can check out the link that Mike Pfeiffer put on there and see what he's talking about. You got the older version, not the bright. Okay. Yeah, I got the older version myself. And that's what I wanted to say. So even the buildings I model, I try to make sure I get an older version that would be more typical of the 1960s or before. That maybe something built in the late 50s that was still used up into the 60s. I recently found something online through, what's the model, what is it? I know our friend Roy down in Panama orders from him all the time. Modeltrainstuff.com, MB Klein. Yes, Mike, I'm sorry. I order sometimes from MB Klein too, but I can't find some things from you. But they had a A&W root beer stand, and you had one too, but I really like this one better. And this A&W root beer stand, it looked like it's more of the 50s style, but it could have been also, this is type I've seen in the 60s. I remember as a kid, 1965, going to our local A&W root beer drive-in. You drive in, they'd come to you, just be like the Sonic, if you've been to Sonic hamburgers, just like then, you pull up, and you have a little thing right next to your window, and you put your order in, then the car hop comes out to you and brings out your order, your food and drinks and that. Well, NW root beer was like that. And they used to have a thing that would clamp right on your windshield, and they would serve you the food right there. It'd be a tray, a windshield clamping tray. And it'd be great. Not windshield, I mean a window, window on your driver's door or whatever, or your passenger door. They clamp it right on there, the tray. Your roll down window. So it was really good. Hey, Vinny, welcome aboard. You see I made you a moderator, and you're one of them, so keep everybody in check, Vinny. But yeah, so I got a A&W root beer, and I forget the name of the manufacturer. It's a kit, and that's one of the things I'm going to try to recreate, because I remember that old place in Tustin, and it was right across from a railroad track, right across from the Southern Pacific line. We had 2 railroads, the Santa Fe and the Southern Pacific, that came into Tustin, California, where I grew up. Even though I was born in Arizona, I grew up in Southern California in Tustin, and moved there when I was 2 years old. and all of my childhood memories of all the orange groves around, the orange growers. The citrus industry was huge at that time, and that was one of the principal reasons the railroads came into Tustin, was to ship things in and out of there. A lot of the oranges and lemons and things that were grown in the citrus fields there, in the citrus groves, I should say. But yeah, car hop is a word you don't often hear very anymore. That's true. Bringing back a lot of good memories. But that's a lot of what I want to create in the railroad that I want to build. But that's what I want to bring up. I know a lot of you, so tell me about your layouts, and all of you here. What do you try to do to ensure you're creating the era you want? Whether it's a modern era, I know like Vinny, I've seen his layout. It's fantastic. He's modeling the modern era of the BNSF Railway from Phoenix up to Ash Fork. It's a great thing. And whereas like I said, I try to keep to the 60s. I think Mike is sort of doing 60s, would you say? You need a blind drive-in theater. Well, Tustin didn't have a drive-in theater, but we had ones close, not too far. We had the old Orange Drive-In. I think that's a long gone. That's a memory. Remember the Highway 39, old Beach Boulevard. If anybody knows Beach Boulevard, that ran between Huntington Beach and up to Buena Park, up where Knott's Berry Farm is in California. That ran all the way down to the beach in Huntington Beach. And old highway is State Route 39. And they had a highway, I think it was off of the Garden Grove Freeway or close to the Garden Grove, somewhere between the Garden Grove and the 405 now. Even though 405 I don't think was complete. It might have been built somewhat then, but most of it was built in the 70s. Old style in Racine County, Wisconsin, less than 2004. Yeah, that's awesome. I came across a really old style A&W. I think it was down in North Carolina. Might have been down there, or might have been in Tennessee. Actually, it was in Tennessee. It was on a U.S. highway. It wasn't on the interstate. I was driving my truck down there to make a delivery, and I was driving past there. I said, wow, look at this old A&W. And it looked just like, how the Sonics are today. It was an A&W. It was a drive-in like that. It was really, really cool to see something like that. Old style A&W that was still around. So there's still a few of them that are around, but most of them are more modernized. They look like a modern, like a fast food restaurant, most of them nowadays. So, but again, so tell me about your layouts, and what do you guys do to ensure you keep to a certain era? Tell me about the eras you model and what you do to make sure you keep to a certain era. Drove past an old drive-in theater. Where did you go past the old drive-in theater, Roy? So there's some kids. I have an arrow. Okay. A double screen. That's pretty neat. Hey, Roy, do you remember when you were down there in National City, you had to pick up something down there, I think, and then you stayed the night down in Otay Mesa? You remember that? Well, you probably, if you went down the I-5 down south to the State Route 905 to go to that pilot truck stop out there in Otay Mesa, you drove right past, and you probably saw it. I think there's three screens. There's a drive-in theater in Imperial Beach, and I think it's called the Palm. I'm trying to remember the name of it. Palm Drive-In Theater. It's off of Palm Avenue, or no, it's the next exit. Actually, it's not Palm. Coronado Avenue. Yeah, well, you were probably driving in the daytime. You wouldn't, and if you weren't seeing flicks showing at night, but you wouldn't have caught your attention. They have swap meets during the daytime at that place. But yeah, that's still a drive-in theater right there in the old tradition of the beach side, close to the beach, drive-in theaters that they used to have. So they're fewer and fewer to be seen nowadays. South of Dallas, on 45, there's a 5-screen drive-in. Oh wow, I'd like to see that. I haven't seen that. I've driven past there. We have a terminal down in Wilmer. My company does. Wilmer, which is south of Dallas. It's south of the where the 45 and the 20 cross. It's farther south of there a little bit. I wonder if it's anywhere down in that area. So again, bringing me back to the theme of tonight's show, tonight's live stream, what do you guys do to try to what do you buy? Tell me the kind of things that you try to buy for your layouts to keep a specific area you're trying to model. Is there something you guys do, like what do you buy and what do you not buy? What do you try to get for your layout, including the rolling stock, the locomotives? Well, the 50s and 60s are in the local train show. The public enjoyed it very much. Well, that's really great. Nscaler fun. Yeah, that must have been really awesome. So was that it was a show you did. So was that a modular layout? Were you part of like one of those Nscaler modular clubs or part of that? Or what was that you did Nscaler fun? Are you hearing me, Nscaler fun? I hope you are. I was just wondering, was that part of a modular layout that you did for a train show, or was that just your own layout you had there? Let me see if I'm missing something. Oh, personal layout. Okay. Oh, somehow my feed wasn't advancing. I'm sorry. I see it now. That's cool. So tell me, what kind of things did you put on the layout? This is what I'm talking about sort of tonight, is the theme. What kind of things would you buy for it, and what kind of things did you not buy for it, that you avoid, just to make sure you captured this certain era you were trying to convey? Oh, okay. All right, that sounds good. Do you sometimes use like the same layout and you can substitute maybe buildings and vehicles and cars and trains and things like that? Or do you make a different layout each time that's very specific, Okay. All right. Yeah, sort of like what I'm doing. I don't know. I showed this earlier. And I know it doesn't focus too well on my cell phone here. But I have a couple different cars here. I got these from Mike Pfeiffer, and they're both 60s era. This one, it's hard to see the logo, but it's the automated railway. That's the logo concept that came up to promote their railroad in the 1960s for the Union Pacific. And this is the shock control that Santa Fe came up with in the I think they actually came up in the late 50s, but they really did a lot of it in the 60s and carried it on into the 70s. But this is a 60s style. Now, one thing that I try to, now I do have some cars that have ACI labels, when you see it on, it's like the multicolor. These don't have it, but I'm just saying I try to avoid those. I do have some cars that have it, and I've thought about trying to paint them out or get them off of there, because there are actually cars that were made before the ACI era, but they started putting those labels on. Then they have the lube stencils on it, the little black with white lettering that they put on a lot of the cars, and that's pretty modern now. Thank you, Tony. I appreciate it. But I try to avoid those whenever I can. Sometimes, like, I can't. I want a car so badly, and it is a 60s era car, but they basically put the lube stencils on it, the maintenance stencils on afterward, even though it was a car that was made back in the 60s or maybe even back in the 50s, but it was painted later for that when they'd add those on. So I'm hoping maybe in some of those cases I can remove some of those things, because that's a little bit beyond my era. Except I do, like I said, I do have some rail box. I have a little bit of 70s. I also bought some Amtrak. The, what was it, those cars that Cato came out with, that Bud made. I love those cars because in Orange County, where I grew up, when Amtrak took over for Santa Fe, they started running those cars, the Am Fleet, that's what they call it. And so I did get some of those. That's typical of the early 70s, you know, when they started running their own stuff. And I remember they were one of the first ones to use them out there. So I do have that too. And I will run some 70s. So I guess I'll make my layout sort of dual purpose, but it's mainly meant to be the 1960s. That's what I'm going to strive for. I can't seem to get this back in the box. Trying to put these cars back in the box. Help put it in right, I guess. Huh? Well, that's why I was putting it in upside down. I wonder why it didn't fit. These old microtrans boxes. All right. So there's a couple other items I have on order from. Hey, welcome. I was just talking about you, Roy. Maybe your ears were burning down there in Panama. Welcome aboard, Roy. Leisure Line Railroad. It's good to see you here too. Hey, oh, Roy, I want you to see this. I just put it away, but I'm going to pull it back out just for you. It probably doesn't focus that well here, but it's a Union Pacific 40-foot boxcar, the automated railway. So I wanted you to see that. It's one of my boxcars. But tonight I'm talking about era modeling. How you choose the era you're modeling, and then what you do to do that. What kind of things you buy for that, and what things you avoid buying. You know, there's some beautiful equipment I've seen out there, but it's just not my era. You know, 1980s, you know, intermodal and some stuff like that. So I try to, you know, stick to the 1960s, a little bit into the 70s, but mainly the 60s. So that's what I try to focus on. And so that's what I'm asking you about, you guys, what you guys do to try to design for your era. What do you try to buy? I see it, Tom. Beautiful. Okay, thank you, Roy. So tell me a little bit about what the eras you model and what you try to get for it to convey that era. If you hear a background sound, that's my truck. It's turning on. It turns itself on to recharge the batteries. So if you hear a little background noise, that's what it is. Next, I'm just going to turn it off. We don't have it. I don't have to have that on right now. I'll turn it on later. I do have to drive some more tonight. I'm coming to you from, where is this place exactly? I'll tell you. I'm in Illinois, called North Utica. It's just outside of LaSalle, Illinois, I think it's pronounced. I'm off the I-80, not too far from where the Interstate 39 crosses it. And Tony, I never made it to Bloomington, by the way. I sent you a message earlier. After I sent that message, they changed my plans and routed me over to Wilmington, Illinois, which is almost up by Chicago. And I switched loads with another driver. Now I'm heading back to Iowa. Anyway, I parked here, and so I had a good strong signal. I thought this would work for buy an APU. Well, that's up to my company to buy an APU. I'm not going to do that. Yeah, I got to live with the reefer noise anyway. You think that's, you know, the engine noise is bad. You get used to a reefer after a while, having a reefer behind your head, and where I sleep in the sleeper berth back there. But anyhow, so tell me a little bit about the what you guys do to model the era. Nscaler Fun was saying some things. He said he made some modular, or he made some own personal layouts for shows, and the public really liked that in some train shows. So tell me about you. I remember you, Roy Hardwick, Container Man. You were going to be modeling the Missouri Pacific. It's sort of like a freelance based on the Missouri Pacific, but if it still existed today, right? Sort of, that's your HO idea, I believe. I don't know if the Nscaler, remember you were working on an Nscaler. I guess I don't know if that's still on the back burner. But your HO scale plan was to develop a modern day sort of fictitious Missouri Pacific as if it never in-scale bedroom mid-80s. Oh, okay. All right. Now, is the in-scale also the Missouri Pacific? The same idea as you were going to do for your HO? Yeah, I know you model the modern era. Spirit of, there will be some areas in my layout, like the river and bike path, that will be current time. Okay. So, okay. Thank you, Roy. So yeah, you're pretty much similar concept with your HO and in-scale. And what about you, Wilmer? I know you're doing HO. What is your era? Do you have a certain era, or is it just sort of all mixed in? How, some people freelance and they can have modern and old and all together. That can happen because you're basically going to be as creative as you want to be. Okay, like Nancy, she's doing like the 1950 to the 1970s with a couple of modern items thrown in. But what are you modeling, Wilmer? What's your main era? Hey, Vermont Rail fan, welcome aboard. I know you're doing in-scale. We're talking about eras and what you choose to model. Depends on the flavor I feel like at the time. Okay, well, you're just basically you're creative and you have it however you want it. So some people are like that. Scale sleeper line. Hey, Dave Piper, welcome aboard. In scale, HO scale. What do you mean? Are you doing HO scale now, Ryan? Or have you left in scale, or are you doing them both? So you do 50s to 80s, Wilmer. Okay, that's pretty cool. And Vinny does. Vinny, you do basically 2019, right? That's what. And then would you say it's 2000s? What you model, Vinny? Unit trains, including lots of intermodal double stacks. Yeah, that's cool, Roy. Hey, Roy, you know what I see a lot of rolling through when I've driven? I'm on the I-80 right now, but I'm not. I was in Cheyenne a few days ago, believe it or not. Cheyenne, Wyoming. But I'm over here in Illinois, and then I'm heading to Iowa next. But I pretty much followed the I-80 runs pretty parallel, just as it does in Wyoming, in Green River and all that. It runs pretty much parallel to the Union Pacific main line all the way into Omaha and, Nebraska and all that. So it was pretty neat. But I've seen a lot of coal trains. And I don't know if you're going to do unit coal trains, because they still move a lot of coal on the UP. And I don't know if you're, they have tank trains. They have I think you've done some of those. You've done the covered hoppers, a lot of those. But I just wondered, are you, Roy, down in Panama, are you doing the coal trains as well? Is that part of the unit trains that you're going to be doing in your modern era? Triple stack mainline, Bailey Yard, 380 trains per day. So is Roy in Panama still with us? I didn't see if he's chiming in anymore there. Okay, they sure do. Yep, they do run a lot from the Powder River. But they do have some that go along the Transcon line, the main line down there, in southern Wyoming, and I've seen them going right through Green River. So I was just wondering, I can't remember if you've ever run any coal unit trains on your layout, Roy. Have you, or refresh me? I sure do, Tom. Okay, I'm gonna have to look at that, because I remember seeing your tanks and your covered hoppers and other things. Need to see Bailey Yard someday. Where, Roy? Where is Bailey Yard? Is that That's not the name of the yard in. That's not the one in. What do you call it in Nebraska? Is it? Is that what they call it? In North Platte? It is. Okay, they call it Bailey Yard. I didn't know that was the name of it. I just went through there the other day, but I've never seen that yard. Can you believe it? It's you can't see it from the interstate. You got to get off the interstate and go in a ways. Yeah, Bethgon hoppers. Return. Okay. That's pretty cool. Well, what I'm pretty much, again, talking about era and a modeling consideration that, when you're planning a model railroad, the things that and the area you're modeling too of a particular line. Like I model, the name of my channel is ATSF Venta Spur Nscaler. That's for a reason, because the Venta Spur was in Orange County, California. It ran up into Tustin and down into Irvine, California, and served the citrus groves down there. So in that area, I wouldn't be having coal hoppers. It wouldn't make sense. You don't run coal hoppers on a spur line that serves the citrus growers. But you would have reefers. You'd have a lot of reefers. Ice reefers, especially. And some mechanical reefers because it's in the 60s. And you should stop sometime, Tom. Okay. All right. Thank you, Container Man. I appreciate it. Hey, High Brick Builder. Welcome aboard. So I've amassed quite a collection of reefers. That's important to me. Also, boxcars would take wood or wood planks or maybe already assembled crates, because they put the oranges back in those days in wooden crates. I might remember the old fruit crates. That was back in the days before the old cardboard boxes. They might have used some cardboard boxes, but orange crates are really popular, made out of wood. So you would have boxcars would likely take in those crates to supply the packing houses, and then the reefers would be sitting there to take out the packed fruit that's in those crates. All the oranges and lemons and things like that. So that would be good. And to have a caboose, yes, I definitely, if you're modeling the 60s, cabooses were still very relevant, even in the 70s and up into the 80s, but yes, I do have cabooses. So that is one thing. Now, Tustin and Orange County and much of, after the World War II in the 1950s, the United States experienced its, baby boom era and the post-war era of a lot of building. A lot of places were really built up. Suburbs grew like crazy. So there was a lot of lumber movement. A lot of flat cars moved lumber. And the Southern Pacific had their own, they had their own freight trains, almost unit trains. They were some of the first unit trains, really, of lumber cars coming down from Oregon and Northern California to feed the Southern California construction boom with all sorts of lumber. There was a lumber yard right in Tustin that was served by flat cars. And it used to be an old packing house, but the packing house had closed, and it was used as a warehouse or for some other things in the era that I remember in the 1960s. But the lumberyard was big and thriving then. So that's one of the things I'm going to model, the SP line there. It does that. The SP also in Santa Ana had a sugar plant, a sugar factory, or sugar refinery, whatever you want to call it. We call it the old Holly sugar plant. And mine, I decided to dub it as the Domino's sugar plant, even though Domino's wasn't in California. But I just like the Domino brand, and I've decided to dub it that. So I'm taking a little creative license. And it was, the sugar was produced from sugar beets. So they had sugar beet hoppers, these special hoppers that Southern Pacific made to transport the sugar beets to the sugar beet refinery and the sugar refinery. And that's something that, I am going to be modeling. It's all, again, very prototypical of the 1960s era. So all of the buildings, all of the vehicles, all of the rolling stock, and all of the locomotives tend to be from the 1960s, with a couple of exceptions of some 1970s era Amtrak stuff and rail boxcars. But almost everything else is strictly 1960s or before 1950s, you know, some carryover cars from the 1950s. No steam, you know, because in my era, 1960s to early 70s, steam was already gone. There was no steam. So I'm post-transition era. And these are some of the things, again, that when you're choosing to model a railroad, you want to look at, what are you going to have there? You know, Conrail did a haul container trains, and if you're modeling Conrail in the 1970s, that would be perfect for those that want to model that. What's that one? He's got a pretty impressive Conrail model railroad. The I can't say your secondary division or something like that. If you know who I'm talking about, he's back in, I think he lives back in New Jersey or somewhere back east. And he's modeling this whole Conrail. He's done an elaborate thing. He does operation sessions, op sessions, and all that. He is just an impressive modeler with his Sayerhurst, I think it's pronounced, Sayerhurst Secondary Division. If anybody, one of you moderators, have the link to that, you can put it on there for the Sayerhurst Secondary Division. He does it in scale, but he really models Conrail in the nth degree. He does a great job. So I think it's meant to be the 1970s and maybe the 80s, early 80s, before Conrail, you know, was broken up, and then it became CSX, and NS took it over, pretty much divided it up and took it over. But so when you again choose an era or a railroad to model, in my case I'm choosing two railroads, but the era, it's very important that you try to do, you know, what that you create it and create the effect you want. So that's why I try to be sure that I buy all of my rolling stock, all of my locomotives, and everything. Hey, bye, Vinny, if you're leaving, to have it, you know, of a certain era, so it matches. It doesn't look out of sync. You know, Central Jersey Conrail, okay. Yeah, it's an amazing model railroad he has. So take care, Vinny. But so that's something that when you guys are looking out there, how you're going to model, and you know, that's what I do as a model railroader, and that's what I want to pass along. So I try to get everything that will fit in the Amboy secondary. There it is what his module, I think, is. Yeah, I think you're right. But it's something Amboy is. It's something Sayerhurst. I can't remember. I can't pronounce it, but that Conrail modeler, he does something like that. Sayerhurst, Sayerheare, it's ST or something. I can't remember, but it's something like that. But he models it to a T too. He really keeps his era. And when you see something that really looks good and it has the era, you know, you're trying to capture, you just like, wow, looks so authentic. You know, it's so impressive. And I think we all like to try to create that when we build a model railroad. We want it to impress ourselves for one, but we like to impress others when we show it off to, you know, show our work. So it's very important. Oh, thank you if you found it there. I think Roy found the link to it. So that's all I can say is enjoy. Well, good night, everyone. From Redbird Tony. Yeah, I'm getting ready to, I'm going to also be packing it up because I got to drive a little more tonight while I still have hours. So, yeah, and in that case, like Roy did, and in fact, I told you about that, Roy, when Union Pacific runs their excursion trains, and they're going to be running, Roy. In fact, I don't know if it's run yet across Green River. I don't know if it's left Cheyenne yet from the Cheyenne shops where it's been being worked on, but that big boy, Roy, can you imagine you having that big boy as an excursion train? The largest steam locomotive ever built in the world, in the history of the world. A 4884 big boy, Union Pacific. What a heck of an excursion train that would be, with having that at the front end pulling those passenger cars. That would be incredible. That's what's going to be at the Golden Spike ceremony, the 150th anniversary that they're going to be celebrating in Utah. They're bringing in the big boy. That's right. You know, that is an impressive. I can't wait to see that thing running again. There's going to be umpteen YouTube videos. You know how they made of the other one, the 844. Yeah, that was incredible, the 844. But can you imagine the big boy? You know, they call it the FEF. You know, I used to think, what the heck is FEF? Then I thought, oh, obviously, F is for 4, E is 8, F is for 484. That's what it is, the configuration. Well, this is like a lot bigger than that. It's a 4884, FEEF. It is one huge mother of a locomotive. It is a long locomotive, big one. And it's got I bet you could hear that from 2 or 3 miles away. Just the chugging of the engine when those pistons are going and it's blowing the steam and it's rolling down the tracks. The weight of it, just the sheer weight, the massiveness. And they blow that air horn, you know, that steam horn or whatever you call it. I guess it's an air horn of a sort. Oh, that's got to be incredible. There's going to be plenty of videos, believe you not, here on YouTube when that thing is rolled out and displayed for the 150th centennial of the Transcontinental Railroad, of the building of the Transcontinental Railroad. UP celebrating that in Ogden in Utah. But they're going to be rolling it all the way across Wyoming and then down into Utah there. So it's going to be quite an impressive sight. So that is an example of era modeling. You know, you can model the modern era like Roy in Panama does, and you can have steam because they use it as excursions. Then you can have modern locomotives, modern GEVOs, and all sorts of things. Or you can do like I do and do the 1960s, and I have a lot of EMD, SD 40, 45. I've got EMD GP9s, GP30s, GP40s. I got a lot of Jeeps of that era, and some Alcos and different locomotives from that have been made in the 50s and were still used up into the 60s in that era. So I have a lot of things like that. Well, I want to thank you guys for joining me tonight and for having this discussion about modeling era and the importance of, how determining how you're going to design your layout is the era you choose, for it. So that's an important factor. So I'm glad you could join me on this conversation tonight. Well, I'm going to be signing off now, and I'm glad you guys were here and could be part of it. So thank you, the Carver, and thank you, Wilmer and Colorado Railroad, all the people that came in. Thank you, Roy from Panama and William Sullivan and everybody else, Dave from BNSF, Nscaler semi-retired semi-driver. Sayreville, yep, that's it. I couldn't remember that name. That's the one. Thank you, Dave. So, Hastings BNSF. Anyway, it's great you guys came on board tonight. We had a lot of fun here. And I'll see you next time. You guys take care. All right, bye. See how I turn this off.